Good afternoon, and welcome to Expose Yourself to Art, a show that looks at the creative process by inviting artists to join us in a chat about their life and their work. My name is David Schrader, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Linda Scheller. Join me. Hi, Linda.
Hi, David.
It's been a couple of weeks. We were off for sure Mother's Day.
Mm-hmm.
How was that for you? Was that especially?
Well, it was nice. It was quiet. I received cards. I talked to my kids. Loved it.
Yeah. Well, I did something really different on Mother's Day. My brother called up and invited me to go with him to Miami to watch a Formula One car race. So it was something that's totally unexpected. And as my brother said, random, because we don't usually think this way. But anyway, we're back on the air together. And today we have a very interesting guest, as always. Her name is Karen Kingsbury. And I met her, I guess it was a year or so ago when she joined Mistling Gallery. And she works with Mosaics. And very, very interesting lady doing very, very interesting art. So I'm anxious to have her join us and tell us about herself and her art. So come on in, Karen. Oh, there you are.
Hey.
Welcome. Here, let's get you in the, get you in the hot spot here.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, y'all.
Hi.
Hi, Karen.
So, where we usually start is asking people to tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? Where are you from?
Well, I am a Californian. I was born in Southern Cal and moved up to Northern Cal when I was in 6th grade and lived in the Sacramento area for a while until I went to Nicaragua. And I was in Nicaragua for 5 years. And I had one son with me and another one was born in Nicaragua. And so I'm very influenced by international art. And I've always been a teacher. Pretty much my whole career was in education of some sort. And I was living in Nicaragua during the revolution. And of course, that's not a great place to be. So I came back to the States with my kids and kept working. And then we went to the Marshall Islands for 4 years in Micronesia. And again, I was a teacher. And again, I was very influenced by the island art and making things there. And pretty much I've always been interested in garden art. So that's kind of how I started this whole thing. And
you mentioned being a teacher. What did you teach? Did you have a subject or was it?
Well, I have taught K through 7 in various times of my life. And then I have taught English as a second foreign language for a lot. And I came back from Nicaragua and I got my AA degree in English. And then when I came back from the Marshalls, I got my English bachelor's and master's in teaching English as a second foreign language. But while I was getting my master's, I was working as a part-time assistant in the new student orientation office because I knew Max, and that's kind of
okay.
And I worked at San Francisco State for 25 years as the director of orientation. When my boss left, I applied for his job, and so my teaching career took a different path. And so I lived in the Bay Area for the last 25 years, and I retired. And I always knew when I retired, I was going to continue to make garden art. And so I decided to start my own business here in Modesto. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
Okay. So where did that interest come in? You mentioned something about in your travels or something. Um,
Well, I'm always interested in handmade things and how things are made, how things are put together, colors and composition, but with non-traditional or unconventional objects. So I've always been interested in like concrete, wood, making wind chimes. Then I learned jewelry techniques so I could make better wind chimes. And then I wanted to put together things, and I was doing assemblage art with concrete. And I finally rolled into Mosaic because it's yet another way you can put things together.
uh-huh.
And then here, that's kind of what I've settled on.
Okay.
But
So
I never stopped trying to come up with different ways of doing things.
yeah. So that wasn't in your. I guess what you're describing is that you were pretty much a self-taught artist.
Yes.
It wasn't in your educational background.
Nope.
No. Where did that interest come from, do you think? I mean, it's always been with you?
Yes.
Yeah.
It turns out that my father and my mother were both crafty people. Although you couldn't like have like said that back then. It was just that people liked hobbies. But now looking back, I see that I always had a crafty side from them. And my twin sister is also an artist. And so it just kind of evolved. Although when my twin sister and I were growing up, we decided that one would be the artist and one would be a musician. And so we wanted our own identities. So I played in the orchestra. I was a violinist for like 8 years. I was in the Camellia Symphony shortly, for a brief time before I went to Nicaragua. And then she developed her own art business as well. She's unfortunately not doing that anymore, but now I finally am. So it's kind of interesting how life turns out.
Yeah. You used the word crafty. Has that been an issue for you ever? I mean, because I know some people in the arts fields, make a distinction between arts and crafts.
Yes, they do.
Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, I certainly understood the distinction too in my own way. And when I first went to the Michelin Gallery, it was, I think, in late 2018 or 2019. I met Tony Pooler. He was docenting that day, and we got to talking about it. And I told him, looking around the room, I was like, oh, look at all these lovely paintings. That's all I saw. And I was like, oh, I guess I don't really belong here. And he was so nice and warm, inviting, and was like, sure you do. Come, bring your stuff. He even saw it and said that to me. I think maybe I showed him pictures on my phone, but I don't even remember doing that. But I did start to bring things in, and lo and behold, they sold. And also, I've felt that being in a gallery has elevated my art to art, because I'm always striving to be better and challenging myself to do different things that are not only going to appeal for artists, but are going to appeal for Modestans or people in the Valley who want to have art in their yards. Because that's my background, is making bling for the garden.
Bling for the garden. Oh, I like that. That's really nice. So, okay. And you brought us many examples of the things you've done.
Yes.
Maybe that's a good time. We can start taking a look at some of that now. Would that be
All
okay?
right.
Okay.
Sure. Shall I?
Before I do this, Linda, do you have anything else you would like to get into before we start looking at her art?
No, I think you've covered everything I was going to ask. So
Oh,
let's take a look at your art.
Yeah.
All right.
Here we go.
Okay. So the pieces that I'm going to show you today kind of represent a broad spectrum of art that I do, starting with some of the earlier pieces I made while I was here in Modesto, because I kind of marked Modesto as the time when I had retired from the university. I no longer had to make, websites and speak to people and do orientation, which was extremely time consuming and fun, but I could focus on doing this. So this is kind of like my self-portrait with dishes there in the middle. The piece on the right represents something I really love to do, which is take regular three-dimensional objects and bling them up with mosaic pieces and sparkly bits. And then on the left is another kind of mosaic. It's called glass on glass. It's basically using a picture frame with glass in it and mosaicing on top of it.
Uh-huh. Well, wait a minute. Go back just a minute. Yeah, because I want to say something about the. You really made an impression with. I don't think it was this one, but the guitar that you made.
It is this one.
It is this one, and people were they were like scrambling to get this from you. Outbidding each other, so to speak. So you really made an impression on people here. That. It was this is art. This isn't this little crafty stuff that people do. You really created something that appealed to a lot of people and made an impact on the gallery, at the people there. So that's what I remember anyway.
Thank you. And it just so happened that down the street, one of my neighbors had a yard sale, and I literally walked down there and saw that guitar sitting on a stand and brought it home for $25. And I was so happy. And I even brought it back to him and showed him, and he wanted to buy it. And I said, "Oh no, this is going to the gallery." Okay.
Okay, now you can go on.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I first started here in Modesto, I did a lot of like shows and fairs, and I believed in making small pieces that people could hang in their yards, on their fences, or in their homes. So this is kind of a representation of where my art was at the beginning of like 2017, 2018. A lot of assemblage, but starting to use dishes in my art as well. Air dry clay, all different kinds of things. A lot of wire work, because I love making wire wrapping things. And I was able to sell quite a few pieces and start to get a little bit of a fan base of people that kept coming back and wanting another piece. I even did wind chimes, and I always tried to find unusual tops to become wind chimes. And these are two examples of that. I found this broken horn at like an outdoor festival, and I couldn't snap it up fast enough because I knew that would make a great wind chime. And then I had this German xylophone. That was what the bottom pieces are. And so it was already colored. And then of course the shoe is just not a ceramic, but a porcelain shoe. And I made it pretty as well. But my most popular pages on my YouTube channel, my most popular videos, that is, are of making wind chimes. And so more people want to see my wind chime stuff than want to see my mosaic sculptures, but that's okay. Everybody has something to look at. I also did a lot of furniture at the beginning, both with plates and dishes, and then also with stained glass pieces. And I really enjoyed it, and they were definitely fun to sell, but that's kind of something I don't do as much now. But at the beginning, that was another popular thing that people wanted to buy.
Karen, when you say plates and dishes, what's
Yeah.
the process of turning them into these pieces of art?
Perfect question for this next slide. So this is an example of a British flag, right? The Union Jack. And I'm doing it mostly with pieces of dishes. And you see that little black tool on the right-hand side of the screen? That's called a wheeled nipper. And that's what I would use to cut the pieces for the mosaic. And what's really important to remember is that I never use a hammer. I don't bang, bang, bang pieces into submission. I want pieces to be a certain shape and also be able to preserve the piece kind of intact. So the nippers are the number one tool that mosaic artists use.
And they come in different sizes?
Yes, if you have a really thick plate, you could have a really much bigger version of that wheeled nipper. Certainly, you can use the flat nippers that you could use on those big ceramic tiles, but most of the time we cut with the nippers, just bigger for a thicker piece.
Great.
Yeah. So then all of these pieces represent things that I might have taken to the gallery. So this is like later. And once again, I'm fooling around with cars because we live in Modesto. And so
Yes.
for me, I want to speak to where I am, and people love cars. So I have done innumerable versions of the car mosaic over the years.
The new graffiti museum needs one of your pieces.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go. And at the end of 2019, I went to Southern California and I took a sculpture class because I wanted to make my own totem. And so on the left-hand side is me starting to carve with foam a totem that has 4 parts. And then next to me is how the 4 parts look after they've been finely sculpted and then sanded and prepared to be cemented. And then after they're cemented, I can start to put the mosaics on the 4 pieces. So this is actually in my backyard. This is my personal piece. And the dog represents our dog, Kantishna. She was 14 when she passed away. And then the kitty on top of Kantishna is Dulce. And Dulce lived till she was 22. And
Wow.
yes. And then my personal favorite bird is an owl. And then my husband, who was a veteran police officer and very proud of both, the eagle was for him on the top.
Okay. So tell me about the sculpting.
The carving?
Yeah, you did this yourself?
I did. Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So you have, you start with big blocks of insulation foam. They're those 2-inch thick and they're about 6 feet tall sheets that you can buy in the hardware store.
Mhm.
And you draw in them the shape you want, and then you start to carve and carve and carve and carve. And then you use finer and finer tools to get them to be the shape that you want.
So did you know you were a sculptress? You became one to further your
Yes.
your development, right?
Yes, I really wanted to take my art to the next level. And so I wanted to learn how to make the shapes so that I, in turn, could make sculptures like this. Yes.
Right.
It was pretty cool.
It is. It is. It's
And
very
then,
impressive.
then the next year after I did that, we had the Artemont Art Festival at the Michelin Gallery. And of course, it's our big fundraiser of the year. And so I wanted to make a blowout piece that would maybe make the Valley people excited. And so once again, using the same techniques in my front yard, I put this little tent up, and that's where I did all of the styrofoam work so that the pieces wouldn't fly all over the neighborhood. And then this represents the shape after it had been coated with a cement slurry, ready for mosaic. And then this is the finished piece on the right that was at the gallery.
Wow.
So there's a 1933 Roadster on the bottom. It's about 3 feet wide. And then up on the top, there's a 1957 Chevy with the fins and turquoise and white, of course. And then in the middle, I made a wine bottle to represent all of our wonderful wineries, especially Gallo. And then the orbs represent agriculture. And then the bottom one near the Roadster represents the car culture. So there's a lot of like literal metal logos of different cars on it. Yeah, it was a pretty cool piece.
Did a lot of research.
I did.
A lot of thought to put things like
Yeah.
this together. Yes.
It was a labor of love. It took me a solid month of working full time, day and night on it to finish it in time.
Really, a month? That's amazing given the
Well,
complexity.
it was a lot. What a lot of people in the mosaic world know me for is making these head planters. I was able to get like, I think it was about 18 different heads, and some of them are up there on the top rack waiting. And I learned, or I taught myself actually, how to hollow them out, put a PVC pipe down the middle so they could drain and be actual planters with different faces on them. And so these are 3, and then here's 3 more that I made, including the first hat that I'd ever turned into a sculpture piece on top of the head planter. And then I've literally gotten commissions from families that wanted me to make like couples. So I've made like 3 different husband and wife couples. And this is kind of a cute set. He likes motorcycles and fixing cars, and she had this denim vest on. And yeah, that was a really cool piece to make for each one of them. And I shipped them to Arizona because that's where they live.
And those are like teacup handles for ears?
That's correct.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have lots of there's lots of color involved here.
Yes.
Are you constantly in search of colored glasses and dishes and things, to make these creations?
Yes. I have storage areas. Like in this room, I have a wall-to-ceiling, wall-mounted set of shelves that go to the ceiling full of small tiles that are like commercially made. And then I have racks and racks of stained glass, which can be hand cut and used. And then I have a couple of sheds worth of dishes. So organization and storage is always a big deal for me. And that's why I don't collect very much right now, because I don't have room for it, and I have to use what I have. So yes, I'm always on the hunt for a really good piece that would be the perfect piece to use. in a sculpture. For example, he has on his t-shirt, he has a white t-shirt, and there's like an old Dodge car that's
I
on
see.
his
Yeah.
t-shirt, right? And that was the front of the coffee cup. And I cut out the coffee
Oh.
cup and used it for his t-shirt.
My goodness.
Yeah. I don't know if this is jumping ahead if you were planning to talk about it, but do you create any of your own mosaic tiles?
Yes, I do. And when I first made the first totem, I wanted to have flowers around the dog, the base. And so I flew to Arizona and I took an intensive tile making class in order to learn how to make my own tiles. And so she, on the right, has flowers in her hair and also flowers on her vest that I made for her. And also the little butterfly is like her tattoo. And so, yeah, those were all made by me.
Do you have your own kiln as well?
Well, fortunately, I have either friends that have kilns, or I've joined as a member the Chartreuse Muse, and I can fire there as well. So that's what I was planning to do when I came back, is make my tiles and glaze them, but then take them somewhere else and have them fired. Yeah. And then these three ladies were made for a show that was at Missland. It was the 19th Amendment anniversary, which happened a couple of years ago. And so I decided once again, I was really going to challenge myself to make, again, real people, but like famous, revered people. And so there's a lot of pressure to like do it well, because you don't want to insult the memory of those people, right?
Right.
So I challenged myself to make Ruth Bader Ginsburg there on the left, wearing her dissent collar. And so she is also a head planter, same techniques. Her hair is bugle beads, so very small black beads that I put on, that adds to sort of the realism of the piece. And then in the middle is Rosa Parks, who also has that same hair technique. And then on the right is Emily, who is just like an archetype of a suffragette, not necessarily a person. These three pieces were really, really fun to make, and I love how they turned out. Sometimes it surprises me when you put the eyes on or you finish the hair or something and suddenly, oh my gosh, it really looks like them. It's very exciting.
Yeah, I remember these. I remember those.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
knew who the first two were, but I didn't. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out who the third one was.
Oh,
but that was the, as you said, representative. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Her name was Emily, for Emily Pankhurst, but she didn't really look like Emily Pankhurst. She looked like more of the younger suffragettes that also, were out there on the lines protesting.
Okay.
And then here's another example of just like, I found this random piece of driftwood on Tahoe shores, and it just screamed at me, I am a whale. Make me a whale. And so I brought it home and I gave it a tail, and then I mosaiced it, and it was also at the gallery, and happily the whale sold. But I love to try to use, things that are a little unconventional and turn them into something fun.
That's a good word. I always feel delighted when I see your work. They're fun.
That's always what my goal is. Yes.
You're successful.
Thank you. Thank you. This shot is another example of garden art, but in my own garden. During March 2020, late March 2020, when we were home, all of us, I decided to tackle the last part of my backyard that did not have paint on the walls yet, on the fence walls. And I created this forest. And as I painted from left to right, I started making the creatures that would inhabit the forest. So by day, I would paint it, and by night, I would make mosaics for this wall. And so it's like an entire scene with all kinds of fun creatures. And I posted it on social media every day my progress. And a lot of people commented how it really, was something that uplifted them and made them feel better because it was kind of a dark time and something to make you smile. So that was accomplishing my goal too.
We have a comment from someone watching named Anna Pagonis Pitts, who said, every piece is thoughtful, whimsical, and beautiful. I concur.
Oh, thank you, Anna. Appreciate it. And then this was yet another piece that I found. It was a wooden koi fish, quite large. It's at least 2 feet wide or 2 feet long. And it was really in rough shape. The paint was chipping all over it. It was bright pink. It was gross, but the shape was so cool, right? Because it was like this undulating shape. And I knew that if I could put lots of sparkly bits on it, that would be a dynamite fish. And so, yeah, I made this piece, and it also sold at the gallery. Yay, Miss Lynn. Yay.
Karen, do you plan the colors in advance, or as you go along, do you kind of just like, oh, I think I need some red here. So how does that work?
Well, I usually start with one part of it, and then as I put in one part, the next part kind of dictates to me what's going to happen next. I basically drew all over the shape with the pattern, the shape of those stripes. So it was clear to me what rows of something were going to go where. And there's a lot of beading on the fins, but there's a lot of mirror glass on the whole body. And so this is an incredibly sparkly fish. Incredibly.
Gorgeous.
Thank you. So we were talking about the fact that I had to learn how to make my own ceramic pieces. This is just an example of what came out of the kiln one day. It was like super bright, colorful, and happy. And it inspired me to make this table using those pieces.
I love that. That is so great.
When you make your own, are they from clay or from glass?
They're from clay.
Clay.
So basically you have to cut the clay into a slab, roll the slab, make the shapes, wait for the shapes to dry, glaze them with at least 3 coats of glaze, and then also a clear glaze on top of that. And I just fire usually once, but sometimes I'll fire a second time and add the little black lines or the little white lines, the final details.
Mm-hmm. I know you have a friend from England who makes his own mosaics, but his are glass. Have you ever thought of going in that direction?
Martin Cheek is a fantastic artist, and he, fortunately for me, has been here a couple of times. He's coming back in the spring. He kind of has his entire inventory of his fusions at my house. So I have Martin Cheeks fusions for North America in my house.
Oh, okay.
Because I have Martin Cheeks fusions in my house and he's okay with it, I occasionally will use them in my pieces. So I am so fortunate that I don't really have to make the fuse glass myself. I've got a friend.
Yes. Very nice. Yes. Very talented friend.
What are fusions exactly?
I have a piece coming up and I can show you.
Okay, good.
All right. So hang on to that question. I'll show you in a sec. This is an example of a table that I made using my own ceramics. This woman wanted me to cover her outdoor sink with a outdoor water theme full of critters. She wanted tons of turtles. She wanted dolphins and porpoises and whales and whatnot. So this is a finished piece that I did for her. It's about 44 inches long.
That's great.
Yeah, she was pretty happy with it. Then one of the nice things that I get to do is teach other people how to make mosaics. And usually I'll ask them what kind of shape would they like to make. And so here is one of the mini classes that has been taught. And this one in particular was at the gallery. This was in 2019. And standing next to me is Linda Knoll from the gallery, and she has an octopus. And what's really interesting about that wonderful piece is just a couple weekends ago, we took her octopus and I cut out a shape for her on a base of a table that we could insert her octopus into the middle of the table, and then she could finish the octopus around it with more underwater mosaic pieces. So now, she's going to have an outdoor table for her garden, and it's going to be with her own mosaic in the center. So it's a really cool piece.
That's marvelous.
Yeah. We just had a class and it was very full. People are dying to get back into classes, and I can't even blame them because we've been starved for this.
Oh,
And so there'll be many more, I promise.
Good.
yeah.
You might see me at one of them.
There you go. This is an example of a piece that I did for another show that was at the gallery. I think it was the very first autumn art festival that I participated in. And it just so happened that it won an award, which was really thrilling for me. And nicely, it did sell at the gallery during that show. I do love making pumpkins. And this one is all about different dishes that have the color scheme of the fall. And so there's so many different dish patterns that were used for each of the ribs of that pumpkin. Now, this is another piece that I made for a gallery show, and I love this piece so much. It was called The King of the Cats. Anybody knows my work, you know that I love making dogs and cats. So this was a shape I found in a thrift store, and it was flat on the back, so I had to bulk it up and make it more round, and then build a base for it. And then it was covered with lots of sparkly happiness. And I even took little tiny figurines of cats and I mounted them on the cat here and there, so they kind of pop out. And they that inspired the name of this piece, which is The King of the Cats.
Oh, Yes.
And again, it's old. Yay.
Wonderful. Yes. Well, yes, we can see why. I mean, these are delightful. They're wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Thank
again, I'm impressed with all of the artistic abilities that you draw from other areas in order to create these pieces. You know, whether it's with sculpture or whether it's with your drawing and painting. Yeah, you're using other art forms in service of this, of what you do. Yeah, I'm impressed. It's very, very, very impressive. And you keep educating yourself and studying to make it better.
Yes, I appreciate that, and that is kind of my goal: is never stop learning new techniques. So um, this piece is very representative of how can I make this work? How can I get it to be the way I want it to be? And then, the eyes, you're going to start to notice when I do my faces of something, it really becomes one of the most central thing is to nail the eyes. And so I was always very interested in getting that, because that really contributes to the sale of a piece, is that the person looking at it is like connecting with that piece in an emotional way, the awe factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a deliberate choice to do. But I love trying to create those awe moments. Now, this is like the start to finish process for a very popular piece I did for another show at the gallery. This is the beginning of Spotty the dog. So on the very left, you're going to see that I used styrofoam and then I covered it with a mesh. I also made, using armature wire and armature mesh, I made the fun ears. Then on the right here, I covered it with a very strong, lightweight sculpting medium that I started using more recently called Pautaya. And you only have to apply like maybe 1/8 of an inch of thickness to the piece for it to be a solid piece that you could just paint it and leave it in the garden when it cured. In this case, of course, I wanted Spotty to be a mosaic dog. So it started with the eyes, and it was really important to try to create a face. And I like to tilt the head on my animals because we have an emotional connection to that kind of a look from our animals, our animal friends. Now, the really cool thing about doing Spotty is that he was a collaboration with a potter that's also a gallery member, Tammy Jo Schlappett. And I got all of her shards, and she has the most beautiful glazes on her pieces. And so I was able, using her pieces, to cover Spotty. And for example, around the nose, which is a ceramic nose, I made that. I used the edges of cup mugs to make kind of that implied hair that goes around the muzzle of a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And then these are mostly rounded shapes, which are perfect when you're using on a round sculpture. You can thin set them on, and they are very sturdy, good adhesion. Then on the left, this is what Spotty looked like when he was grouted. You can see the difference between Spotty ungrouted there on the right. He looks really cute. But then when you grout, he comes alive. The dark grout really adds to the drama of Spotty. And then on the right was a cat that I made. And she also was Tammy Jo's additional pieces, her shards. So doing that kind of art with somebody else's shards was really a game changer for me, for sure. And made 2 really cool pieces.
Yes, very.
And then more recently, last year, I made this dragon, and she was for our auction that we had online. Friend Diane Sorensen, who is the dragon lady, I challenged her to a dragon making contest in our own styles. So she made this glorious big red dragon, and then I made sort of a house dragon that could sit and be part of your family gatherings, you know. Whereas Diane's hung on the wall and sort of lords it over the family, you know, guarding the whole family. This is a little personal dragon that just kind of joins you at dinner.
Yes, yes.
Yep. So that was a really fun challenge. And then finally, I can show you some examples of the glass fusions. So this is my little monster, which was a combination of, see on the head, there's all those little spiky things in different colors. Those are glass fusions. And so it's melted glass, and you can basically, the thickness is really nice. It's at least 1/2 inch thick. And so you can like stand it up, and it can make like hair in the case of this little monster. The body has all of these different pieces of pottery again, but this time these are pottery pieces from Randy Krimmel. So after using Tammy Jill's, I said to Randy, hey, you got any broken pottery for me? And he actually gave me some that wasn't even broken yet. So I was able to use those like nice rounded forms on this little pudgy monster. And so this is one of my pieces that was used in the Cricket's Hope charity event. And he's adorable. He wants to give you a hug, is why his arms are open.
Oh,
Yes. So he's a nice monster who wants to hug. And then on the right is Caramel, who just was in a gallery show again recently. And she is a plastic hobby horse, complete with stand, that I found from a picker and completely covered it with mosaics. So it was like top, bottom, under, over, everywhere. And what's really important about Carmel was nailing her eye. I took a little, one of those egg bowls that you put your hard-boiled egg in, and I cut it in such a way that it created the eyelid for Caramel's eyes.
mm-hmm.
And so it creates kind of that, again, that cool horse kind of vibe that so many of us love horses. So yeah, I thought she would be a great addition to that particular show.
And she has a new home, is that correct?
Yes, she lives at the silos. Our friend Aaron Valencia is a collector. He has purchased a couple of pieces from me, and I call him my patron because he has patronized my artwork, mine and Diane Sorensen's, as a matter of fact. And so, yes, Caramel lives at the silos right now, happily.
Yes, I visited the silos on the Artist Open Studio tour and walked around a corner and said, oh, I know this. I know, I've seen it before. Yeah.
Yes.
Very nice place for it.
Yes, it was. So this is the last piece. I kind of wanted to show you some progress shots. We have a current show called Trash to Treasures at the gallery. And one of the pieces that I made started as a shoe. And so this is the high heel shoe that I got on eBay because God knows I would never wear such a thing. And it's huge. It's like size 10 women's shoe. And so it's a really big shoe. And I was looking at it and looking at it and looking at it. And I finally realized, if you turned it around, you could make a bird out of it. And so this is the armature that I created for Schubert. That's the name of the bird. And after I make the aluminum foil armature, then I cover that with that sculpting medium Paltaya, and then I can proceed to Mosaic Schubert. And his tail is all different kinds of soda cans and also beer. I'd saved from what my husband used to drink, and they'd been sitting in a drawer waiting patiently for the time that they would be used. And so that's just a reminder that Schubert and many other cool pieces are at the gallery, and it's the current show, Trash to Treasures.
Yes. And which brings up the question, before we started, you said you had another thing that you wanted to talk about, which is talking to artists about how to promote themselves, how to sell themselves, how to sell their art.
Yes.
And you're a perfect person to do this because you started late in life and you put together this art form, and you've been highly successful at selling and teaching, and you've kind of found your way.
Yes.
So what kind of advice would you give artists?
Can you pull up that slide that I made? There.
This
there we
one?
Go. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So one of the things that I have really tried to work on, and I know it takes a lot of time, but it has paid off, at least for me, is to have an online presence of some sort. So for example, with my YouTube channel, which is Karen's Garden Creations, I'm able to reach people literally around the world and share my art form. Also, again, it's really important to me, not just that I make art, but that I can help create like a little bit of joy. And so making these little videos, because I don't like long videos myself, especially when people talk too much. I like short and sweet videos. And so mine are literally about 3 or 4 minutes tops. And they just talk about the process of making things. And hopefully they do bring a smile to your face. I also have, collected a lot of artwork that I like to share on Pinterest, which anybody, can do. And it's a great way to promote your own work. And there's nothing more satisfying after years and years of being on Pinterest to have somebody else, some random other person, have a piece of my artwork on their Pinterest page. That is like the coolest thing. And then Instagram is definitely a nice place to show off your artwork, post something really quick, and have a lot of people be able to see it. And then lastly, and this was actually the first thing I ever made, was my website. So I think that it's difficult, of course, to like wrap our heads around the technology, but I do advise people to embrace it and try, because you really can make interesting connections that can lead somewhere. I've had commissions come from my online sources. I've had friendships made. meeting people that I've only known online that were other artists. They either come here or I go there. It's really been an inspiration source for me. So I advise people, if they can, to embrace one or some of these social media. And of course, a lot of people already use Facebook, which is great, but not all people want to use Facebook. So I say try it. You might like it.
Yeah. Yeah, which reminds me, some time ago, I came across an article, might have been on one of these social media places, where a fellow was talking about the mistakes that artists make trying to promote themselves. And his basic premise was that a lot of artists, hang their stuff on a wall and expect that to be enough, that someone will discover them. And his point was that most people don't buy the art for art's sake. They buy something from the artist. And what they want to know about is the artist. And what you're talking about here is you're putting yourself out there. You're saying, here I am. This is what I do. This is what I'm like. These are my joyful things. These are my funny things. These are, so that people really know you and can connect with you. You're not just putting a piece out there and hoping somebody comes along who will discover it. And so this is a good example of different ways you can put yourself out there. And I don't know, some people feel uncomfortable, like, it's bragging about themselves or something, but it's not really. I mean, not the way you do it. You're just saying, here I am, this is what I do. Yeah.
At the gallery, when I do my docent shift, couple hours a month, if I have some pieces at a show and I watch people walking around the room and then they stop in front of my pieces and they're just like staring at them, I will say gently, "Oh, do you like those pieces? I made them." And then they'll turn around and they'll be shocked and they'll be, "Really, you made them?" And then they look at them even harder. And then I'll just start talking about them, and it enhances their gallery show because they've made a connection with an artist. And every artist at the gallery that is there, I really advise it because they always thank me. And many of them ask questions, and just because I'm standing there, I'll even let, like the other day, there was a little kid and I was like, "What do you think Schubert's tail is made out of?" And then I touched Schubert's tail. Of course, it's aluminum can. And the mom's eyes are getting bigger and I go, "It's okay. I'm standing right here." And so the little kid did exactly what I did. Flicked his little aluminum can tail. "Oh, what's that?" And it was like joy, it was so fun. So yeah, I totally love doing that when I'm at the gallery. It just makes people feel like welcomed, and also that they can connect to art there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things I love most about doing these live stream episodes. We get to meet the artist, hear about the creative process, their, life story, the trajectory of the development of their creativity, and then it just makes it all the more meaningful and joyful.
Yes, I hope so.
Absolutely.
It does. Well, this has been a joy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Me too.
You are reflected in your art. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Yes.
They both make me smile whenever I'm in your presence.
Oh,
or the presence of your art. So I really want to thank you for joining us today. I thoroughly enjoyed it and look forward to seeing you around the gallery. So.
All right. Me too.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen. It's
You're
been such a
welcome.
pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we will say goodbye and
All
end the
right.
broadcast. Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.